Alright guys, welcome back to the Sugar and Spice podcast. As we always have been planning, it's going to be an alternating week thing where it's a light-hearted topic and then a heavier topic. So this week we're going to kind of be touching a little bit on American healthcare, just because of some of the things that I've been through in the past and kind of recently as well. We did try to film this podcast last week. Was it last week?
It was about 2 weeks
2 weeks ago. We tried to film, but
Yeah.
first of all, I was going through an issue with a kidney stone, and my phone was running out of storage, so it was kind of like a disaster of a day, so we didn't really get much done. So if you kind of see a little bit of, cut off sentences or clipping, different...
Where we don't look as good in the
or a
next
little bit
clip.
different. It's because I had to kind of merge these two podcasts together because we weren't really able to finish, the other week because of all the stuff that was going on, But
That's life.
it is. And it did bring us, into the topic of healthcare with, what I was experiencing. So, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about, what happened with, my kidney stone and, the history of my kidney stones and my most latest, experience with it. I don't know. I don't really like going to the ER. I always feel like it's a waste of time and a waste of money. Nothing ever really gets solved. So, yeah, we'll talk about a little bit about that kidney stone now.
Medical care is a business. It really is a business. And if you can't afford to pay, people don't want to go until, they're
Definitely, there's for sure something wrong, and then it's, too late sometimes. But, yeah, anyway, so with, the history of my kidney stones, the first one I ever got was, 3 days before I got married to my husband, and I thought, my appendix had burst.
Oh,
we were, staying the night, it was, the night of, the 4th of July. And, we were at the night, staying with his parents. And then I just woke up in the middle of the night with, my right side just, in so much pain. I was, crying. I was I don't know what's happening. And then I just started puking, nonstop.
Really?
Yeah, it makes you, you're in so much pain that you just, start vomiting. So I was well, we think it's, my appendix because it's on, the right side. Maybe, it burst or something. So, we run to the ER and they're no, this is kidney stones. I was oh, God, fix it. It's awful.
Did it, happen all at once, that pain, or was it just really gradual?
That's how they know, because with an appendix, it's gradual pain.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently with, a kidney stone, it's just, it's there.
And this happened to you 4 times.
Yeah, the first time was pretty bad. And then, they just give you pain pills and, things to, help the kidney stone pass and then send you home. Mm-hmm. And so, I was just basically, slept, the next 2 days, and then it, went away on its own. And then the next 2, that I've had, it was pretty similar to that. It just, they just go away on their own after, a few days. This year, this is, my second one. So, the beginning of this year, I had one actually, a couple months ago. And at first, I thought it was, a UTI, because, I never had, blood in my urine before in a kidney stone.
That must have been terrifying.
Yeah, so, I was... And it was funny because I was at the hospital for my mom. She was getting, a procedure done, and I had to be the one to drive her home when it hit me. And I was is this, a UTI? So, I ended up having, her husband come get her instead, and I, went home. But I was, already at the hospital. I should have just gone to the ER. And I was well, I don't want to go to the ER again. Let's try to go to the urgent care. So I went to the urgent care, and the guy's oh, well, I mean, if you want immediate relief, we're just going to have to send you to the ER. I was no. But luckily, while I was in the urgent care, this one passed, with that same day,
That's
while
awesome.
I was in the urgent care. So, it just, passed, and I was okay, I think I'm good. And I just, went home. So, this most recent one, though, was, the worst one. I don't really know how big my other ones were, but this one was 3 millimeters. And they don't usually want to blast it or, help you take it out unless it's, 5 millimeters or bigger, just to give you, an idea. But my body is really small, and they think that probably has, a difference, I don't know. But it felt it was just too much. So, again, like my first one, this was, 3 days before our wedding anniversary. But then I felt it, the day I started my period, so I thought it was cramps. And I'm lucky enough that with, my cycles, I don't really get heavy, cramps. They're usually pretty good. So this was, like, unusual. I was like, wow, the cramps are, like, really heavy this time. I was like, okay, this really sucks. But usually it's for the first day or two, and then it'll be fine. So then, like, the second day passes, and the cramps are still there. And I'm like, oh, these cramps suck, but, like, tomorrow should be better.
You know, I've heard that they describe that kind of pain that you get from a kidney stone to childbirth.
Yeah, everyone says that. And actually that like, kidney stones are worse.
Really?
Like, sometimes it can be worse
Oh,
because
gosh.
it's like that. It's in the same area. Like, you get that bad back pain that, like, you get with, like, childbirth and, like, up front in, like, your abdomen, too. But apparently it's just worse because, like, with childbirth, like, your cramps will, like, you have a break.
Mm-hmm.
You can, like, breathe, like, and you're prepared for the next. This is just constant. Like, it just won't go away.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah. So this one was just, and it just got worse, like, every day. And so finally, like, I think it was early Sunday morning, the morning of 4th of July at, like, 3 a.m., I was like, okay, Ethan, this has just become unbearable. Like, at that point, I, like, was pretty sure it was a kidney stone because I started puking, and I was like, well, now there's blood in my urine and puking. Like, these are the signs of a kidney stone because I know now.
Oh, my goodness.
I was like, I think I need to go to the ER because we were like, well, don't want to waste your time at the urgent care again because they're just going to send us to the ER. So we went straight to the ER. They, like, gave me, like, pain meds and stuff, and, like, stuff to help the kidney stone pass, and I was sent home like usual, and I was like, okay, it's fine, because whenever they do this, it usually takes a day, and it will go away on its own. So I was like, okay, cool, take the pain pills and, like, sleep it off, basically. But it just, like, didn't go away, and, like, the pain pills, like, didn't help, and I was like, wow, this is weird, like, usually it helps, but it was, like, so painful that it only really took the edge off, and not enough to, like, even help. So I, like, sat around and, like, dealt with that for 2 days.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah. So
Absolutely horrible.
Yeah, like, when you came to visit me, I think it was, like, the next day that I went to the ER.
Yeah, they told me, yeah, just go straight downstairs to go see her, and she was, like, a little sickly old lady in bed.
In bed.
Her covers are all up to here.
Whisper, you brought me a drink. Thank you. I was, like, half, like, asleep, like, on, like, pain meds. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And she has, like, a half-eaten burrito next to her,
Yeah,
and
I was like, half-eaten toast. I was like, I've been working on this taco all day.
all day.
I
One
could
taco.
not, yeah, but this, like, kidney stone, like, it was, the reason I ended up going back to the ER is because I couldn't keep down anything. Like, I couldn't keep down food or water. Like, every time I would drink
Wow.
water, like, 15 minutes later, it would just all come back up. And to the point that, like, I hadn't eaten in, like, 3 days, and all I was puking was just stomach bile. Like, it was just yellow, like,
Wow.
like, hardly anything. I was dry heaving a lot because nothing would come out. Like, I had nothing in my stomach. I couldn't keep any water down. So, like, finally, on Tuesday, we're
Which
like...
I think you should have went in earlier, because hot tip, if you can't even keep water down for a day, go to the ER, because you could get so dehydrated so
That's what
fast.
they said, too. Like, when I was there, they're like, you're really dehydrated. I was like, I couldn't keep anything down.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah, I waited because I was like, you know, usually they pass on their own. So by this time, I had it Thursday, and now it's Tuesday, and I'm back at the ER, like, early morning. First thing we woke up, I was like, I need to call work because I thought I'd be okay, but no, like, I need to tell them, like, I'm going to the ER because I can't even, like, get out of bed. So we went to the ER, and it's just annoying because the guy was like, well, you know, these things, like, they take usually several weeks to pass, so it's just how it is. And I was like, I cannot deal with this for, like, several weeks. Like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, this is just unbearable pain.
And that's that's, like, the attitude that, especially in healthcare, yeah, there's a little bit of that, but when it comes to emergency medicine, a lot of these nurses and doctors, they don't want to hear about your ouchies.
I know.
They don't care because they want to see the blood, the guts, the gore, the broken arms, you know, ortho, all those kinds of things. And I'm just saying from my experience, I don't know how everyone else is, but in this area,
I feel like a lot of people can relate. And I bet, like, a lot of people that we've talked about, like, Ogden Regional, like, if you know that hospital, we've had a lot of experience, like, with our immediate family, like, especially on Ethan's side, who've just had horrible, like, experiences there and lots of, like, malpractice and, like, not a lot of organization and things get mixed up. So we've never had a good experience, but it's, like, the only place, like, my insurance covers, so, like, I have to go to this hospital that I already know I hate, that doesn't do good. And I'm sure, yeah, like, a lot of people out there can relate with, like, similar situations, but
They don't really do much for comfort there either.
They
like
don't
they can offer you like, oh yeah, maybe I'll give you a pain med if I'm feeling you
like
know,
you're being true and you're not just here to get meds. Like, oh, are you sure? Like, you're not just like wanting to get high on these pain meds.
real.
I'm like, no, this is real.
It's
Please,
sad.
relief.
They probably did they offer you a heat pack or a cold pack or anything?
They did. So yeah, actually, I asked for like, well, actually, when I was finally admitted, but like in the like ER, they did bring me some like warm blankets. I just like religiously held to my side.
Religiously? Oh my gosh.
They like never left my side. But yeah, so the second time I went in, like the ER doctor, like they gave me more pain meds, but like it honestly, like I don't know, because it felt like it didn't do anything. I was just like, and then he basically was like, well, we're gonna set you up with a urologist for like a follow-up appointment, and we're just gonna do that like right now, so why don't you head over to the Ogden Clinic? It's like a 10-minute drive from the hospital. They're like, you head over there, go see this urologist guy and see like what he can do for you, basically. So I was like, okay, like, so we got discharged and like immediately went over to the urologist, and we had to wait for him, which was like another like 30 minutes, and like I was in so much pain that like the front desk lady, she's like, you know what, do you want me just to take you back to a private room, because I was crying in like the waiting room.
Oh no, Courtney.
So they got me like a hot blanket, and they like took me
man.
back, and we like waited in the back because I was in so much pain that like in the lobby I was like rocking back and forth, like hyperventilating.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was so bad. And then like that's why, so like then the guy came in and he saw like I was just like doubled over, like crying. I couldn't even answer his questions, and he's like, okay, like we're sending you straight back to Ogden Regional. And I was like, oh my god. And we're gonna do like the surgery to like get it out. And so I was like, okay, good, like they're doing the surgery, but why did I have the runaround of like ER twice and then going like send me straight to the urologist, and then the urologist is like, no, I'm sending you straight back to the ER.
I feel like a lot when it comes to the ER especially, like you really need to advocate for yourself. You really need to do some research and understand, because another big attitude there is that they're not there to treat you. Yeah. They're there to, I guess I could call it triage. They're there to figure out what's going on and then send you off.
Like
they
like
don't
put
care.
a band-aid, like, and just like determine like, well, this might help, but if it doesn't, like, you're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, and they do things like that a lot. Like, they'll send people home when they're not okay.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, then they're dead. So
it's a little, before you continue with your story, there's another, I know I have all the stories. There was a patient that went to the ER there, and they weren't doing good. They were lightheaded. They didn't have very much color. They just weren't feeling great. They checked their blood pressure, and they were fine. Checked their vitals, they were fine. They did not draw labs for whatever reason.
Oh my gosh.
And they sent them away. Come into my clinic where I was working, see that he can hardly breathe, he can hardly function, his blood pressure's fine.
Because he was coming in for like the dialysis.
Yeah. And so at the end of dialysis, I had a coworker that was like, dude, like, you gotta go in and you gotta figure out what's going on. And he goes, I did. They sent me home. I've been this way for days. We sent him back in and called the ER and said, you guys really need to draw labs. You need to take a look. Turns out he was bleeding internally.
Oh my gosh. And did he get like sepsis?
Well, what happened is that he was bleeding in his GI tract. So it's in his belly. He's bleeding. I think it was in his stomach or in one of his intestines. So he was bleeding so slowly that his body was making up for it with fluid. So he had no red blood cells pretty much.
No.
So he wasn't getting oxygen to his brain. But his blood pressure is going to be great because, he's got the fluid in him, just doesn't have blood.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
They just sent him home. Like, he could have died. And so with your situation, they gave you the runaround.
Yeah, like a huge runaround. Like, I was back and forth, and like in the meantime, like, no pain meds, because all my pain meds from the original trip to the ER were at home, and now I don't have any from the ER or anything because I'm just going back and forth. So like the pain started kicking back in again, and it's just becoming unbearable. So then I get admitted for the surgery finally, and I waited in the waiting room, or not the waiting room. I was waiting in the room, like, with my own bed and everything, but for 2.5 hours before they came back with, like, the pain meds.
Did anyone check up on you?
Yeah, the one guy, like, the one nurse came in, but he was like, well, I have to figure something out because for some reason, like, it was Dilaudid that they were giving me. They were like, it got put on hold from the pharmacy until 12 p.m. like midnight or like 12
Why?
a.m. like midnight. He's like, it's on hold for some reason. Like, I'm figuring it out. Like, I'm gonna go figure it out.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh my god. And I was like, I can't take any more. Like, it'd been 2.5 hours at this point. It was like a 10 out of 10. Like, I told them, I was like, it's a 10. Like, I just was like, couldn't lay down. I was like sitting up. I could not like lay back or focus. I was just like rocking back and forth. And Ethan, like, meanwhile, was like freaking out. And I'm so glad I had him there to like advocate for me, because he was the one who was like going back and forth, like, where is it at? Like,
That's good.
Can we get her like a heat pad and like all these things? I was like, I need help. Eventually, like, the pain meds were like kicking in and it was working. And then I had my surgery like at like 4:30, 5 o'clock that night. And yeah.
So you spent the night then?
No, actually, like, thankfully, because I was worried I was going to have to, and I really didn't want to, because that was going to be expensive, because that's what you think about, is like, please, I don't want to stay the night. Like, no, like, they did the surgery, and then I was able to, like, immediately, like, got home out of the ER in, like, the post-op, like, room, and then I just went home from there. But, like, they had to put a stent in, so, like, they, like, blasted it, I think, and then they put a stent in, which, like, helps drain, like, any possible infection or, like, leftover stone fragments, which is super uncomfortable to have. I can't even tell you, like, my pee has not been normal color. For, like, a week.
She's peeing the rainbow, guys.
It's, like, red. It's bad.
Oh, that's horrible.
And it hurts to pee. Like, it just hurts to have the stent in. And I'm the one who has to pull it out on Monday. Like, I have just, like, little strings, and you just, like, okay, like, pull it out when it's done. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to do that.
And so kind of like the underlying theme of this healthcare thing that we're going into, and we think that many reviewers have also experienced this, so please tell us your stories. But the underlying theme is basically that they're not believed. Like, they feel something is wrong with their bodies. You guys know best. We know best. We know what's comfortable for us, what's normal. And sometimes we do get, we look up on WebMD and get kind of freaked out. But other times it's serious and it's something that does need addressed. But doctors, nurses...
I know, I feel like it's easy to blow a lot of stuff off in the beginning. Yeah. But yeah, usually to get a diagnosis, like, you have to go to, like, 6 different doctors, honestly, to, like, even figure out what's going on, so... Anyway, so do you want to tell the story about your sister's dental experience then?
Okay, this one is wild, guys. Like, so anyways, one of my sisters goes to the dentist, and, they do a root canal or whatever they were doing. What happened is she left this, and everything was, like, fine up until, like, a few days after the root canal, and her mouth started, like, feeling funny, but specifically, like, her face. Her face was like, it would tense up and she'd feel pain. And it was bearable for her, but it had progressed to the point where it was very, very painful.
Yeah, and I know, like, from people who have told me, I'm glad I haven't experienced it myself, but I'm sure if you have, you can justify that, like, tooth pain is apparently, like, some of the worst pain you can experience. Like, because it's so close to the nerves or something, or, I don't know, but I've heard from some people that, like, if you have, like, or need a root canal, like, tooth pain can be some of, like, the worst pain you experience.
I can only imagine. I've been blessed with good teeth, but so growing up, like, this happened off and on for a while up until it became pretty excruciating for her. Like, she would double over, hold her face, couldn't even really breathe, just probably, like, at a 9 or a 10 for her pain scale.
And she hadn't gone to, like, the dentist or anything at this point yet?
So they had gone back as soon as she started feeling those things, and he had said that, oh, everything looks great, I don't see anything wrong with you. And so, that was dismissed, and so she had been experiencing this pain, and it had progressed pretty far to the point where my parents were concerned for her, like, oh, maybe this is something a little bit more. So this turned into about a year's worth of hospital visits.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like, on and off, different specialists, MRIs, CAT scans, the works.
Trying to, like, figure out, like, and in the meantime, she's still experiencing, like, off and on pain and, like, swelling in her face, too, right?
Yeah, like, her quality of life had gone down a lot. She couldn't even smile. That's how bad it had gotten. Can you imagine? Okay, 16, 17 years old, you are so self-conscious anyway, and then all of a sudden, like, half of her face died. I don't know if I mentioned that. So the nerves on one half of her face just started drooping.
Oh, yeah, drooping.
Yeah, so she, like, a stroke victim, just was drooping. couldn't smile.
And that's why they thought it was like something a little more serious.
That's when they started taking it serious, is when it had progressed that far after about a year. They took her aside and they said, and my family, they said, look, we are still doing tests, but we suspect that it's going to be MS. And those you don't know what MS is, it's like your muscles and nerves like slowly die.
It's kind of like a death sentence, isn't it?
Like a really long, slow
Yeah, it's a
death
long
sentence.
terminal condition.
Yeah, like you'll probably end up in a wheelchair, probably end up in a nursing home early in life.
And so to be told that at 17 years old.
And that it was progressing that fast, like, devastating.
Yeah.
We were so sad. Until, throughout all these doctors, someone decided that they cared enough to really investigate what was happening. Kudos to them, because it takes a little bit of time to do a really big difference in healthcare. And so this individual actually asked the question, like, okay, well, where did this begin? Let's figure this out.
Yeah, like, let's go back to the beginning and, like, start all over.
Okay, well, they did their medical stuff, whatever they do, came to find that it was not MS, it was a dead nerve. So the dentist had killed a nerve or had, like, severed it.
And this was during, like, a routine dental checkup?
Routine, like, it wasn't, no, it was like a they drilled her tooth.
Oh, like cavity or something?
It was either like a root canal or just a normal cavity. But this was also the dentist that would give us, like, not even really numb us. He'd give us lidocaine and immediately drill into our teeth and laugh at us, like everyone's horror story. But what happened is that they said that he had drilled into the tooth, had severed a nerve, not completely, like it was hanging on by a thread, and it became infected. And the pain that she was feeling was a facial nerve that was infected. So it had caused something called Bell's palsy, and they were able to do what they can to fix it. To this day, she still can't smile straight, but she doesn't have the pain. We came back to that dentist, told him what had happened. What did he have to say? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, he's like, are you sure it was even my fault?
Yeah, like, you're just being a baby. You're being dramatic.
Yeah, which is so sad because that's such a real thing, you know, taking a year to even figure out what's going on, but it be, like, misdiagnosed because the proper steps weren't being taken and you weren't being taken seriously in the first place.
Just listen, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you just need to listen.
Or, like, really just, like, go back to the beginning, even if, like, you've had... And that's why I think second opinions and, like, even a third opinion is so important because, like, things like this are so common in America. I think
expensive.
It's scary, it's expensive, it's unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to be paying for until you get that bill in the mail. Yeah. So, but yeah, that, like, reminds me of, like, a time, like, where I had a dental issue, too. So, you know, when you go get your wisdom teeth removed, you usually go to, like, a specialist who takes them out, right? It's kind of like a surgery, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like an oral surgeon.
Yeah, and a lot of the time people are put to sleep to do it, but you can also do it just being numb. But I only had 2 wisdom teeth, so I was kind of lucky with only having 2. But because of that, I opted not to be put under and just go to my, like, dentist, or it was, like, the orthodontist who worked out of, like, the dentist office in my small town.
It's in a bank, isn't it?
Yeah, like, there's a bank next door to it. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'll just have them take out my wisdom teeth. And they did, and they never gave me, like, any aftercare, like, products, you know? Like, a lot of people get, like, the syringe that has that, like, little curved end, so, you know, you have, like, little holes in the back of your gums, and you clean it out, because there's food that gets stuck in there, so they give you the syringe to get the food out.
It's, like, the most disgusting thing,
it's
too.
so gross. And so I wasn't given, like, any of that. I think I was basically just given a couple of, like, pain meds, but nothing towards preventative care. So obviously it gets infected because I didn't have anything to prevent that, and I didn't know about it. Like, I knew because my husband had his wisdom teeth out before me, and he got that stuff, and I didn't, and I thought it was kind of weird, but I was like, oh, no big deal. Like, I'll just, like, swish my mouth when I drink water or something, and it'll be fine. But it wasn't fine, and it got infected, and at first I wasn't sure, but it kind of hurt a little bit, and it's kind of gross.
Did it smell bad?
I don't know if it probably to other people, but I could taste it, which is really, really gross to say, but, like, the pus that was kind of building back there, it tasted salty, and I'm like, what is that salty taste in my mouth? And it was because it was infected, and so when I figured that out, I was like, okay, I'm going back, that's disgusting. So I went back to the same dentist, and I told them what was going on. And they clean it out for me. Like, they get all of the food that was stuck back there. They're like, oh, yeah, just, food has been stuck back there. So we cleaned that out, and you should be good. I think this time they did give me a syringe to prevent it. No, actually, they didn't. It was the third time I went that they gave me the syringe. So it actually happened again. Then I went back, and then they gave me the syringe, because, like, at that point, I had, like, asked for it. I was like, don't you guys have something that I can, like, use to prevent this? And they were like, you weren't given that at the beginning. Like, one of the, dental assistants asked me that. She was like, you weren't given that? And I was like, no. So she gave it to me. And then, I don't really know how it happened again, but at this point, it had been, like, 6 months since I had gotten my wisdom teeth out, and I was, like, suffering from these reoccurring infections the whole time. And I think that it happened again because they never really fully cleared out the infection. Eventually, and I'll insert a picture, so just a warning if you don't want to see it, but in my mouth, it was on my right side, I noticed there was, like, a black spot and, like, a greenish spot.
It was black.
There was two. There were
and
two
green.
spots. Yeah, there were two spots. It's like a white, green, and a black spot.
I'm picturing
in my
like
gums.
mold. That's what I'm picturing.
Kinda. And that's why I was so scared of. My husband's like, that looks like a bone, and like it's like in your bones or something. That looks like it's a seriously like deep infection, and we were getting really worried at this point, and I didn't know what to do. But luckily, like at the time, my boss that I was working for, her brother-in-law was a dentist in the area. And she just, like, referred me to him, and, like, in, like, the next week or something, I went to go see him, and he's like, oh, yeah, like, if this has been, like, a reoccurring thing, like, I'm just gonna scrape away, like, all of that infected gum tissue and, like, let it kind of regrow back. So, and then I'll insert the picture of, like, the before and after, and you can kind of see how swollen, like, my inner cheek and my gums were, and then the after of, like, how much he had to scrape away because of how much was infected, just because I wasn't given the proper preventative care equipment for preventing it in the first place.
Just a little syringe, would save 6 months of pain.
I had to go back 3 separate times, and it kept happening. Like, they just weren't doing, like, I don't know, it was so frustrating. It cost a lot. But, like, thankfully, like, her brother-in-law did it for me. I don't think I even paid for anything for him to do that.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, like, he pretty much did it for free. He was so nice. Wow. I am so grateful. Yeah, and he, like, didn't charge me or anything. But, like, all of the times I went to the other dentist, like, I was being charged to get that infection, like, cleared out. It's so stressful being, like, in a situation where you feel so helpless about your, like, own body.
It is, because healthcare, it's a very, like... It's a balance, because you are so vulnerable when you go to a doctor, when you go to a dentist, when you go to someone for help. Like, you're at your most vulnerable state because something's wrong. Like, you need help, and you put so much power in a person. And there are some horrible doctors, horrible dentists, horrible nurses, horrible people in healthcare, but they cause a really bad name, and I feel like there's more good than there is essentially bad.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to end this on one last story, which I think is, like, one of the craziest things that happened to, like, our family, and this was recently. This was the end of 2019. My mother-in-law got sick, and, insurance only covers certain hospitals, so you're kind of stuck on who you get to choose to go to, and she was stuck with the hospital that we really hate. Both of her parents died there under, like, preventative circumstances. And so it's very, like, it's a sore spot for our family. And, our insurance is the only place, like, that will cover that. And so we have to go there even though we all hate it. But anyway, so she got really sick in, like, December 2019. She had really, really bad back pain and couldn't figure out what it was to the point, so she went to the ER. And she's telling him, like, like, at first I thought maybe it was, like, a kidney stone because, I can say, like,
Did she have kidney issues at this point?
Oh, yeah. And I will state, like, she does have a history of, like, kidney failure. Like, really, like, it's being watched.
She's just, like, in
It's, like, she's, like, in the stages of, like, it's getting pretty risky, like, going from, like, stage 2 to stage 3, like, kidney failure.
That's rough.
Yeah, and so, there's a lot of things that you can't take when you're in, like, kidney failure, like certain medications. Certain, like, dyes that they use for CT scans and stuff like that.
And it's widely known. Like, it's just basic practice. You need to be really careful with kidney patients.
I mean, it's in her history. Like, it's in her medical history.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
that's one of the first things that they should be looking at.
Yeah, exactly. So she's in the ER. And for the first thing that like you do when you're in the ER, you're obviously in a lot of pain. The first thing to do is to give pain meds. And so she was given pain meds, which we didn't later find out, but we did find out later that it was pain meds that are not recommended if you have kidney failure. Anyway, she ends up getting admitted to the hospital as they try to figure out what's wrong. They start to think maybe it's pancreatitis because they did like a ultrasound or some kind of like CT scan, I think, and they thought that they saw maybe a little bit of swelling around the pancreas, but they were like, but we're not really sure. It looks like it could be, but we're going to run more tests because we don't really know. And so then, like, one of the nights, one of, like, the doctors came in and started accusing, and I was there, actually. Me, my husband, my father-in-law, and my mom were all in the room. And the doctor comes in, he's like, can I speak with you guys privately? And, you know, my father-in-law's like, no, like, anything you have to say, you can say it, and, you know, in front of all of us. And he's like, well, he, like, looks at my mother-in-law like, are you using drugs? And she's like, no. Meanwhile, you know, these pain meds that they're giving her aren't really doing too much. And so she's like on the bed, like, you know, she can't lay down. Like, her back is hurting so bad. And they're sitting here like accusing her of like doing drugs. They're like, well, we found in your system some heavy like painkiller medication or something like that. Like, you're not taking any of this? Like, then how is it in your system? She's like, I don't know. Like, I don't take any of that. They tell her that there's opioids in her system that they didn't prescribe her, that they hadn't given her. So they're like, where'd you get these opioids? Because, you know, we've been giving you this and this, but all of a sudden there's this in your system. Like, how is there this in your system? And she's like, I don't know. Like, she's been out of it this whole time because of her back. Mm-hmm. Anyway, later on, like, she's in the hospital for, like, 5 or 6 days before, like, they end up letting her go with, like, no answer. Sorry, we don't know why you're in pain. Nothing's showing up on your results. Oh, and not to mention that they wanted to do a CT scan and give her contrast. And using, like, the dye contrast, it kind of helps doctors see, like, you know, in more detail, because it kind of, you know, does that, like, glowy thing or whatever, where you can kind of have a better picture of what's going on. But it's not recommended if you have kidney issues. So, like, they're telling her, like, we want to do this scan with the contrast, and she's saying, no, I don't, like, no contrast, I can't have that. It's not good for, like, my body. It's my kidneys. And so, like, they were upset. They're like, well, then we'll do the scan, but we're just letting you know we're, you know, that the contrast, like, make sure, like, it gives us a better idea of what we can find, so if you don't do it, there's a chance we might not find anything that we could have found with the contrast.
Okay, pause there, because no patient should have to tell somebody that they have kidney issues and they shouldn't have contrast. Like, it's widely known. Yeah.
So they do the scan without it, nothing comes back, they send her home, this was after, like, 5 days. And then one night, she's, like, laying in bed with my niece, and at the time, who was, like, 2 years old, and was sleeping with her. My niece kicks her in the back in her sleep. And all of a sudden, her pain is gone.
Magic.
It's gone. And the conclusion that, eventually, like, the specialist that she went to go see, like, the conclusion that was, that we came to was that she had gallstones, and my niece kicked the gallstone out of wherever it was stuck.
She did better than any of the doctors
and she
could.
felt so much better after. A couple months later, I think the specialist requested the ER notes that they had taken. And in the ER notes is that opioid they were accusing of her taking that they didn't give her.
I don't think they ever really looked at her paperwork, at her charts, because they were like...
I don't think so either.
She has charted, like, obvious kidney failure. She has to verbalize it to all these people. It's like things that a doctor and healthcare team should know.
Yeah, it was so sad. So when they found that out, they were so mad. In fact, she posted it on Facebook, but later took down the posting because so many lawyers were reaching out to her.
Really?
But she actually didn't want to deal. She's like, I don't want to go through, like, a 5-year, like, lawsuit.
Okay, wait. Lawyers reached out to her?
On Facebook, yeah, because, like, well, she posted it privately, and then a lot of people, like, a lot of our family was messaging her, like, can you make it public so we could share it? And she's like, yeah. So a lot of people ended up getting, like, over, like, 30 or so shares on Facebook, and then all of a sudden, like, from all of the attention, she was getting messaged by lawyers that she ended up taking it all down. Because she's like, I don't have it in me to go fight this.
Oh my gosh. They need to, though. This hospital is notorious. They've removed someone's kidney that was wrong, like, the wrong kidney once. They've almost killed some of the patients that I was associated with in the past. They've almost killed several of them. Like, they really need to reform it, fix it. None of us are perfect, but you can't be killing people.
It's so bad. So that's like one of the craziest stories from like American healthcare that I have had, and that was so recent too. And it's just mind blowing that so much is overlooked.
For me, what it is it's that it's less about people and more about work.
Yeah, and I can understand that, like, if you're used to something and a lot of it's common procedure and then you get something that's super uncommon, like, you want to treat it like it would be a common procedure, like you have, you know, plans for it. But when it's something that's not common and it's, like, not being figured out, I don't know, I feel like they just give up really easily. I think that's a good way to put it. They give up easily, and then you're just being shoved off to different specialists, and then they're shoving you off to different doctors until, like, you either die from it or someone is luckily there who catches it for you, who goes back to the beginning where it all started and like, you know, goes through the whole history, having personal experiences with it. And I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure everyone has this story about American healthcare out there that they've had a bad experience with. I'd be surprised if you didn't, honestly.
So please share, like, tell us about it. Tell us about the crappy ones, but also, like, if you have any really...
let us know if you have any good stories.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to hear some good stories because I need some hope.
Some hope. There's always one. Like, literally, in situations, there's always that one person that goes out of the way to make you comfortable and happy and treats you like a human being.
Yeah.
Like, and you will never forget them. I never forget them.
Well, you know what? I went to the clinic yesterday for a yearly physical. I've actually been having some issues with, like, a lack of appetite, and I don't know what's causing it. But she was so sweet. She's a new doctor because my other doctor, like, left the clinic. So I started somewhere new, and I have never felt so heard before.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was actually a great experience. And when I got my blood drawn, like, the blood tech, like, was so nice as well. I was telling her about my kidney stone, and she's like, oh, whoa. She's like, kidney stones are the worst. Like, my husband gets them all the time. I'm like, yeah, I'm 23. I've had 4. And she's like, whoa.
Oh, my God.
There's a happy story, I guess, to end on. But... yeah, anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening. Again, let us know if you have any stories you want to share in the comments below. We'd love to read them. But yeah, thanks again, and we'll talk with you next time.
Bye.
Bye.